how to simplify your report creation with user-created templates and preferences. So I will let Rob go ahead and take it away. Go for it, Rob.
Thank you, Carnegie. Once again, it is a pleasure to be talking with all you MasterMine users out there in the world. Although I want to say, sort of in preference to today's thing, that I would like for us to have something more of a two-way dialogue, and of course you are always welcome to call us and send us emails and such. There is, I'll sort of remind you, there is also a MasterMine Facebook page, which, to tell you the truth, gets very little action on it. And we are trying to find ways to develop some better two-way communication between us. So your suggestions about what would be most useful or what fits in best with your way of doing social media would be quite welcome to us. I think I will also mention we do have LinkedIn, which is somewhat more active, and you can even as a user in the MasterMine users group under LinkedIn, you can propose discussions or start discussions which other people can participate in. And so I highly encourage you to do those things. There has not been as much of that as I would have hoped when we set it up, and it might be that we just don't point you to those things enough. But so here I am doing that. So that said, this meeting will be recorded and available to those who attend, as well as those who have simply signed up for this event. And it will be emailed out, but very glad to have you on here live where you can ask questions and interact here as well. If anywhere along the way here, by the way, you want to post a question, please go ahead and do that in the GoToWebinar dialog. And Carnegie will make sure that either it gets asked during the presentation or immediately afterwards. We always want to have you participate with us. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take on our topic for today. What we wanted to do here, this is August, we're sort of getting into the last part of the year when users will traditionally start to use MasterMine somewhat more for doing more investigation of their goldmine database in relation to things like budgeting and planning for next year and so on. As you do that, what we thought was we'd give you sort of a review of doing personal templates and some of the preferences that are set up in the Create dialog of MasterMine, all with the idea of making it setting it up so that you can do reports more easily from scratch. That you can take advantage of some tips and some tools that are built into the MasterMine Create dialog that make it easier for you, for the kind of user who frequently goes back and creates reports from scratch, to not have to go in and check off just what's on the given templates, but actually save some things in your own personal templates as well as in your preferences that just sort of simplify report creation. So that's what we're going to do today. I've got actually one more slide here. It's really those two things that I'm going to talk about. Initializing preferences, in other words, preferences that are set in the Create dialog for initializing reports when you create them at the beginning. Again, that just make it a little slicker and easier to get to them. And then I'll also talk about saving and using personal templates. Personal templates are essentially after you have made all of your selections in the Create dialog, you have the possibility of saving all those selections as a group and naming it in the form of a template so that you can come back to that name and just simply choose that name and have the settings all be just the way you left them at that moment. So that's sort of a quick a verbal preview of what we're after. Let's go ahead and dive right into the application here. Let's switch over to I think I'm going to switch over to Goldmine. Okay, so I am in the our usual demo database here, and I'm going to pull up the MasterMine Create dialog here. By the way, I'm going straight to Create here. Those of you who have the Launch dialog know that, of course, you can click Launch MasterMine, and from there, either launch right into existing reports or do the Create. I'm I just have a button here that does it a little bit more immediately to create. If you don't have that button, by the way, and you want to have it, we could talk later on about the Goldmine setup. It's really just a matter of setting up a custom link here to run MasterMine with a /C switch. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I say that and you want to have that, just let us know. We'll help you get set up. No charge for that. So this is the create dialog. What I'm going to talk about toward the end here, so the last half of this will be the save as template functionality here. But to start with, I wanted to go into the preferences. Now, if you've been using MasterMine for a number of years, you probably are familiar with at least the possibility of setting preferences here. The ones that I'm concerning myself with here today are really the ones that are on the defaults tab. And I'm going to start out by actually setting all of these. Well, I'm going to set four. I'm going to leave 4 of them off, but I'm going to leave this one on here just so I don't have to recreate it. But I'm going to explain what these do, and then I'm going to demonstrate how it works without them turned on, and then I'm going to demonstrate how it works with them turned on and how much easier that is to actually create a report from scratch. Now, and some of this is more useful to you depending on the types of reports that you create. But let me start just for a moment here with the logo part of it. This one's pretty simple. Use logo and specifying here a location of where your logo is. Essentially what that does is make it so that every time you create a new MasterMine report, you are actually implanting a logo. In this case, it's one that's in this location. Let me just verify that we've got one there. Oh, that file's not found. So if the logo disappears from there, then you won't have it. So let me go ahead and choose. Oh, this is why it's not there, actually. Well, unfortunately, I don't have conveniently a logo right here to include, so I'm just going to include this picture of a car. You will have what you will need to have, of course, is your own corporate logo available to you. But by setting it in here in the preferences, you're making it so that this image, whatever the image is, in this case it's going to be a picture of a car, shows up at the top left of your reports every time you create them when you go to print them. Not on the Excel spreadsheet itself, because that would occupy space that is needed for reporting purposes, but just the logo would show up on the report. So that's the only one that I'm going to turn on here to start with. I'm going to have all the rest of these turned off. And then I'm going to create a report and then talk about the consequences of having them off, and then I'm going to come back and turn them on again. And that will hopefully give you a nice dramatic understanding of the value of having those turned on. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save on there. And let's just create a report with our default fields on here. And we'll hopefully don't have it open already. Okay, so we'll overwrite the generically named main contacts report. And so when the report comes up here, this is probably the way you see it normally, because when we create MasterMine, or when we distribute MasterMine and you install it, your initial settings, your preferences, are pretty much the way I had them there, unchecked on all those details, on the details tab there. You would also have it unchecked on the logo part of it. So where's the logo? As I mentioned, it's not here on the screen, but up here on the, if I go up here on the MasterMine toolbar to page setup and we do a preview, you will see this is how this report comes up with your logo or your picture of a car or whatever other picture you chose to put in there. Actually would be on the top left with the rest of the information typically here below it. Now this is a very big logo here, or a very big picture, so it comes in that way. Now you would normally have your logo be of an appropriate size to show up just in the header, and the rest of it down beneath. So this is just like a preview with the logo. I don't know there's much more for me to say about that. You do have some options as far as how that logo is set on the page. I'm in Excel 2013 here, which unfortunately looks a little bit different probably from the way you see it. If you don't have 2013, but basically where that logo is is up here in the header and footer setup. So it's an image right there, and if you want to work with that, that's the picture that's there, and you even have, let's see, I think you have yeah, you do have some parameters that you can work with here. You can't actually set what the size of the logo is going to be up there. You essentially have to have that be, the size of the logo be inherent in the picture in the image that you make available there. However, that said, there is, you can do it, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. You can do some formatting, at least in Excel 2013, change the size of how it's going to be. So we might reduce that by, I don't know, 50%. And I say OK here, so then it's smaller and takes up less space. I don't think I'm going to go into that too much. This is just the settings. These are essentially native Excel settings for your preview and for your headers. But let's go back and look at the more interesting stuff, which is on the report itself, the results of our detail set of our preference settings for details. So the first thing that I would kind of point out is when you create a MasterMine report and you have that the settings unchecked, you get all these fields at the top. Now, you may want for it to be that way. You might be very used to having it that way. The reason for the fields being at the top is so that they're easily available to you. You don't have to go back and forth to the field list over here, so that if you want to quickly make a report of by industry and by sales rep, you can just easily drag them right from there, and you're done. And if you later on decide, hey, I don't want it by sales rep, I want it by score or whatever, it's very easy to do that. Now, for a lot of people, they look at this and their intuition says, well, I don't want all those fields at the top because they just sort of mess up the page. When you go to print this out, it looks messy. And I've seen people do things like this. They'll come up here and take these rows and hide them like that, which is not a good technique, because you still have them there. You may have removed them from your page while you're working with them, but they're still there, and they are in some ways filtering the page. And when you add other fields in or take them out, let's say, well, we don't have any other fields in here, but let's say I take the contact field out, then all of a sudden company shows up here. Well, where did that come from? Well, it actually came out of this hidden area that you had in here. So please do not hide things up there. Instead, if you don't like the fields that are up here as filtering mechanisms for you, drag them off. Now, you can do that one at a time, which can especially be a pain if there's a whole bunch of them. Or there's a tool on the MasterMine toolbar that just simply hides all the ones that you're not using to filter currently, moves the pivot table up to the top of the page, and that actually is the proper technique for what I'm calling hiding the filter fields that you're not using. Now, let me just say one more thing about why you want to have them up there. Of course, sometimes you're actually using them as active filters, and you want to, let's say, have them up there so that they tell you what's in your report. That is an active part of your report. It's part of the header, so to speak, of your report. Now, some people look at that and say, well, I can't, again, intuitively, if I want to do this for California, well, I want to, actually have the field down here, have the state field down here, and let's say choose California. That's another way people actually work with this. It's not a terrible way to do it, but visually, I don't think it's very effective. In this case, it's triggering also the subtotaling here, which I'll talk about here in a moment. You could, of course, turn off the subtotaling, and that might be your presentation. But then what you've done is you've added another field here unnecessarily in the display that just simply repeats the same information over and over again, and it doesn't contribute anything to your report. So to me, a much cleaner presentation is put the state field up at the top, just choose state, have that be a header. Think of it as a setting for the report, just as you might do a setting of the dates that you're for the information that you're pulling, or doing it only for a particular, I don't know, a particular campaign, or a particular source, or whatever field makes the most sense. Actually, I'll do a sales rep field, since that's more common. So only Lori S.'s records. So there you got a filter. Actually, you've got two filters active. One field that's not filtering. Again, you can always go up to the MasterMine toolbar and clean this up by hitting the Hide Unused Filters button. That gives you the simplest presentation, and then it also, if I go to the page setup and do preview again, gives you a nice simple presentation on the page. So yeah, that is that is just my sort of preaching about how you use the filter up here. Now, one of your default settings, as I mentioned, could be to just simply come to the opening page here and not have any fields in the filtering area. Just have it automatically come with nothing up there, and anything that is going to be in the filter area or in the presentation has to be dragged in. I will do that setting on the other when we go back and do this again, and you'll see that the difference that makes. And that's actually my preferred way to go, to actually have no fields up here at the top, but to need to drag them in so that you use them, or when you want to use them, and just leave them off if you're not using them yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back here and check that off just to indicate. All right, we've talked about that. So
Really quick, Rob.
Yes.
We have a question. How do you unhide those unused filters if you want them back?
How do you unhide those? Oh, the fields that we
remove them up there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yep. All right. I'll answer that here in just a moment. So the setting that relates to this is called Hide Page Field Set to All. So namely what it does is it goes through these page fields. These are all called page fields up here. And if they're set to all instead of an actual filter on there, if they're set to all, they move them over here to the field list. And if they are not set to all, if there's actually a selection within them, then they're left up there. And that's basically how that works. So that's the create dialog. So in answer to the question, how do you put them back in? You just simply drag them back in. If I want the create on field, you go in there and drag it up there. And if I want the source field and so on. Is that, Carnegie, you think that answers the question?
I think so. There's not a way to turn them all back on automatically.
Correct. There's not a way to just automatically have them all be thrown up there into that section. Typically that would be a fairly impractical way to go, because you could have dozens or hundreds of fields over here, and that would, and if there were such a button, it would essentially drive the whole pivot table down, 100 rows down on the page, and most people would just be bewildered by that, I think. Okay, so that's that setting. Now the next one that I want to talk about is subtotaling. Everybody knows that sometimes you want to do nice summary reports like this, and it's convenient to have it's convenient to have the subtotaling automatically be in there. I think I already turned off the subtotaling for industry, didn't I? Let me put source back there. So our subtotaling is on for the source field, and it's not on for industry at the moment. But this is the idea of the subtotaling, that as you drag fields in, you get each field is broken out to the right by the next field, and within the items there is a subtotal for each one of those. Now that makes sense when you're doing summary kinds of reporting. Makes considerably less sense when mostly what you're doing is what I would call detail reporting, where you have a whole bunch of fields you want to drag into the row area because you're going to display, company, contact name, phone number, email address, and so on. So if it's the second kind of thing that you want to do, actually let me just, rather than talk about it, I'll just sort of display it. So let's say we're going to drop in contact, or company rather, and then the contact, and then the campaign, and the whatever else it is, and you wind up with this sort of jumbled looking presentation over here. And the reason for all this jumble is all these subtotals that we've got. Source has a subtotal, industry doesn't, but company does. So each item under company is subtotaled. Each item under contact is subtotaled. Anything that has a field to the right of it has a subtotal. Well, we do give you a tool here that makes it easy to hide those subtotals. So you can go to the contact field, turn off the subtotal, company field, turn off the subtotal, source field, turn off the subtotal. Now you have the sort of simplest presentation here of all of these fields, and we've manually gone through and turned off the subtotals for all these. Well, another option in the MasterMine preferences is to just go in here and automatically turn on the subtotals for everything. Now you may think, well, why don't you just always do that? And the reason you don't always do that is that sometimes you actually do want the subtotals for summarizing purposes, or just because you want subtotal because it's just a normal intuitive thing that you want to do. And we thought, well, it's easier to leave it on and then turn it off than it is to turn it on or to turn it off for everything and then leave people wondering, well, how do I turn subtotaling on, or can I turn it on? But you do have both options here as far as your starting point of either having them all turned off or taking the default and having all the subtotals on when you start. And just know that you need to make a decision when you drag a field into the row area, do I want it to subtotal or not? And if so, then use the tool on the MM Tools bar here to decide for that field whether it's going to subtotal. For the selected field, that is. Okay, those three that I've talked about already are the three most important ones. The next one here, hide page fields with no valid items. That is kind of a simple one, and what it's really meant to do is to say, well, if you're not going to hide all the ones that are set to all, then at least you can set it so that if they don't have any useful values in them, in other words, if the create on field literally didn't have any data in it because all of your cells, all of that cell in Goldmine was blank and didn't have any data in them, then this would at least automatically take that field and remove it from the list, even if you were not removing all of the ones that were set to all. So that's why that choice is in there. Hope that makes sense. And then finally, there's this item here, substitute blank space for blank in field items. You've probably noticed, especially if you do history reports or pending reports, a lot of reports you actually you get the word blank put into a cell which is not all that alarming, I suppose, unless you see it repeated a whole bunch of times down the page. You get the word blank substituted for null values in fields, and that can be a little annoying. Now we've worked over this demo database here a lot, so that I don't know that I've got really any actual blank fields in our data. Let me just see. We would know it if we went to the bottom of the list and we saw the word blank there, but we don't. So I'm going to have to. I'll demonstrate that. Whoops, I wanted to do that on the subtotal part of it. If I had it here, I would demonstrate it for you. I'm afraid I just don't have any. Maybe over here. Nope. No actual records where it's blank there. But I'm sure that you've all seen it where the word blank is in question marks. And essentially, it is certainly possible to replace that blank with an actual blank cell, so that it would look more like this instead of like. I'll just actually substitute. I think I can substitute the value here. Right. So that's more often what it looks like. And really all I did was just now I substituted that written word in for a blank space, and what the preference does is just the opposite of that. It substitutes a blank space for the word blank. And note that when I put it here, all instances of that same thing are going to disappear, because essentially what I'm doing is just substituting blank for every place that the word blank shows up down here. If you work with this a little bit on your own side, you will quickly see the value of what I'm just talking about. I hope that it's came through, verbally, but hopefully that kind of gives you a good idea of that. I'm going to go ahead and check that on, and then I'm going to run a report with all of these selections on here so that you can see what the difference is. So, in fact, to especially dramatize it here, I'm going to do a history report. And I'm going to pull some fields that I know have some blank data in them. Oh, let's do last year's sales, and yeah, all that. Something in there is going to have some blank data. And I'll go ahead and say finish, and we'll overwrite a generically named one of the same name. By the way, I always encourage you when you're not just, not just puttering around with this, actually do give your report a unique name so that you will not overwrite it the next time you do a similar report. Okay, so here's our report with all those preferences set. Now, so we'll kind of go through these one by one. Notice that, of course, we don't have, as you usually do when you run a history report, a long column of fields up here on the top left. It actually has removed all of the fields except the one that we actually had a value set for, namely the year, and they're all available on the field list. For users who are not aware of this, if you click off the field list, off the pivot table rather, the field list disappears. Click back on the pivot table again, the field list reappears. That's an important thing to know. The field list is there associated with the pivot table. If you don't have the pivot table active, you won't see the field list. And again, it is always possible to drag fields up here and start using them, to filter your reports. It's just a little bit more of a positive add it when you need it instead of a negative drag it off if you don't need it concept. So let's just look at those settings again. So that's the hide page fields set to all, caused all of those not to be there. Hide page fields with no valid items, well, in this case we had it set to hide them all, so it just hid them all. Turn off subtotals for all fields. Okay, so now when I go and drag my fields in here, if I want to look at my engineering 2014, my records that had, in this case, it's all these activities have happened, so it's a history report of those. But when I go to pull in all this information, get the company name, in fact, I can just, I don't even have to drag them into place. It is possible to just check them on the list here as well. Full activity type, last year's sales, okay to record, on date, and so on. Whatever I want to include in there, just dragging those fields in very quickly. None of them has a subtotal, so I don't have to go through one by one and turn off those subtotals, and I also don't have to be kind of bewildered by the subtotaling that is in there. Did I drag this into the wrong place? Looks like I did. Okay, so I still have a relatively simple presentation of this. Now the OK to record field normally would have come through here with that word blank in parentheses, and in fact it would have been blank for every one of the fields for every one of the rows on the page here. But again, because I had that setting checked on here to substitute blank space for the word blank and the field items, it actually comes through looking like a regular blank, just as it looks like over in Goldmine, and that is more typical of what end users expect to see. Okay, so that was that's all I want to say on the preferences part of this. If there are any other questions, Carnegie, are there any questions on the preferences before I go to the tool templates?
The next part, there have not been.
Okay.
I did want to point out, though, if I can.
Yeah.
If they manually, or if anybody decides to manually change blanks, you have to do that for each field. It's not just substituting blank and say you're okay to record.
Across the entire report. That's right.
Exactly.
You would need to do it for the OK to record field, for the full activity type field, for the contact field, for any field that you want. Now, and she's saying each field, not each record, not each row, just each field has to have that substitution.
There you go.
Okay.
Next.
Next. Okay. All right. So templates. This is a part that I've seen. I don't know how often this functionality gets used, but it is kind of a nice thing. Carnegie wanted me to talk about this one in the user seminar because this is a feature that she likes a lot. And I understand it because if you are a person who really likes creating new reports and you feel you're pretty good at it and you get to do this once in a while, you may find that there are certain fields that you just almost always want to include in your reports. Now, let's look at some examples. So we have default fields that are included, right? So the key fields are included. Our key fields in this case are industry, score, sales rep. When I say key fields, of course, what I mean is that's the name of the field in the underlying database. I don't know why. Oh, actually, we have a kind of a special setting going on in here. But so our key one field is not one of the fields that are on by default. so we should change that. In your case, in almost every one of your cases, you don't have the special thing set up that we do. So you would see key 1, key 2, key 3, key 4, key 5 here. Plus, you would see at the contact level the name of the contact, the name of the company, the state, the source, the date it's created. So, but let's say you've got some user-defined fields. Typically, those would be fields that you see at the top of Goldmine. So if I switch over here to Goldmine, so let's say, almost every time I create a report, I want the sales stage to be part of that report. It would make sense to do that, especially if sales stage, even though it's a user-defined field, is a really important field for you that kind of gives context to any sale information in Goldmine in a report or contact level, whatever it might be. So if you find yourself all the time going and checking the same fields on to include in a report, the way to handle that up here would be to add that in as part of a template. So for example, this is my regular history activities report that's, it's, in this case, it's all history activities. You might be more specific and do just a call report, for example. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to include that sales stage field. Okay, so I can check on whatever fields I want. I might do 2 or 3 of them. I might say, I want this to always include, I don't know, phone numbers as well. So I'd go over here and check on phone number. C1, phone. There it is. Okay. And obviously it's that work, in fact, that we want to replace is the searching around for a field. Okay, so this is history calls with phone and sales stage. Now that I might want to save as a template. How do I do it? I click Save as a Template. I would name it something functional like I just did. So history, or maybe calls with phone and stage. Maybe put in a description, a more detailed description of this. History, all calls with phone and stage automatically included every time, and whatever novel you want to write there you can do. And then we're going to save it under this name, calls with phone and stage. And now what we've done is make a template that will sit up here sort of in parallel with the other templates that you see in here. In fact, you see it right here, calls with phone and stage. It's here in the list because it's a history-related report, so it shows up here when I choose history, or it would show under my list of all templates here as well if I went down here and find calls. Where'd it go? Calls with phone and stage. Note, by the way, when I'm hovering over it, or when I selected or I'm hovering over it, over on the right-hand side, you get that description that I just added. That long-winded description I just put in there. History, all calls with phone and stage automatically included every time. That's over on the right-hand side. If I move my mouse over there, of course, we're going to lose that window. So it's findable there among your reports, and you can just call it up, and when you click on it, it actually sets the field selection and the sort order of the fields, and essentially it sets up the create dialog here to be just the way it was when you saved that template. Now, if I could go ahead and create the report here, but you wouldn't see anything different than what you would normally see, except that you'd see a field or a report created that has phone and stage already turned on. Just to kind of verify here, let me go over and show you the phone field. The phone field.
It's checked on, Rob.
Oh, it's checked on, so it's over here with the other ones. Sorry about that. There we go. There's the phone field, and then here's the stage field, and I guess I checked on some other ones here as well. That's right, I did. Okay, so all those fields are included in that template now, and they will be every time you call up that template. Not every time you hit history and call, which is more your design new approach, but when you go over here, hit use template and pull up that template by name, that's when those fields are selected. And then, from there you could in fact, let's say, deselect some of those fields. You're not obliged to have them in that report if you don't want to. And then hit your finish button and go on from there. So that essentially is what I wanted to cover in today's user webinar. I wanted this to be relatively brief. I know I kind of went on for a long time about the details. Hopefully you found that useful. If you have questions as far as either the templates or the details, now would be a good time to post them in the
I think we have a good one that's been posted to the question dialogue, the words you were looking for.
Dialogue, thank you. Go ahead.
There you go. You mentioned sorting the fields on the template, and they would like you to demonstrate how to sort the fields.
Ah, darn good question. All right, so suppose we want to have contact, company, and then that phone field and that stage field, and then the other fields in here. Now this sorting, and what we're talking about, this is the sorting of the order of the fields in the query, which is important for when you drill down the report, because when you drill down, that's the order you see the columns. That's where that order is most important anyway. So how do you sort them? Well, you use this sort button right here on the toolbar, and then it actually gives you instructions when you click on there about how to sort. So click on each field name rather, not the checkbox, because you don't want to uncheck it. In the sequence you want the columns to appear in the drill down. When finished, click on stop sorting. Okay, so that's our instructions. So what it meant was click on the name. So let's say we want contact and company field. So I've clicked on them in order to sort of set them in that place. Now the next one that I click on is going to be our third field, because I've already clicked on 2. So I want the phone to be next. I'm going to click on phone. You will see it jump to that order. And then I'll click on sales stage. I want that to be 4th. Then again, I'm okay with the date and the day and the user ID and the activity type, but let's say I want the reference to come after that. So you can see what I'm doing is as I click on them, I'm putting them in a certain sort order, and that will be the order that they're in when I drill down. So that essentially is sorting. When I'm done, I'll click this button again to stop sorting. If I went ahead and just hit finish and created the report, it would turn off the sorting at that point as well.
Now I have a question.
You have a question. Your question is, Carnegie,
my own personal question.
I know what it's going to be. You want to know, having changed the order, can I save that to the template?
Precisely.
Uh-huh. Well, and the answer is sort of. We've actually got a new template. It's a template that's derived from the old template in a way. But so when I do save as template, I'm still going to have to name it again. So this time I'm just going to call it history calls sorted with phone, and you put in your description, whatever the description's going to be, and you hit save template, and you say to me, well, what good is that? What good's that for me? Now I've got 2 templates, right? Well, yeah. Let's refresh that list. In fact, I'm going to go back in here to list all templates. So now I have 2 templates. I have the one that I created before, which maybe I still want to have as a starting point. Maybe I didn't mean to destroy it by changing the order. And that's fine because I still have the new one that I just created that's called history calls sorted with phone. They both exist, but if I don't want the first one, well, just delete it. Right-click on it, and whoops, I'm going to choose it first just to make sure I get the right one, although I think I would have been fine. Delete that user-defined template. Now the old one's gone, the new one's still here. Under
history, I think it was, wasn't it?
Right. Well, I'm not seeing it under H, so why not? Oh, no, it's under the word history, isn't it? Let's hope it's still there. It should still be there in any case. Or, sorry, let me just, oh no, excuse me. Did I just delete the wrong one? I guess I did. So I deleted the history one instead of the calls one. Yep. Okay, something's not quite happy with our result there, but let's see what we've got when we come up again. At least one of those templates should still be on the list. And I think we made the point. Whether we discovered also a bug in the handling of the personal templates, that's possible as well. So when I go to history and I say use template, okay, that one's there. Or we might have just messed it up with our, okay. I think we do have a bug in our template management. But I think we made the point about how that should be handled, and we'll just make sure that we iron that out of the software itself.
And Robert posted a good question in regards to all of this deleting. Mm-hmm. Can you accidentally delete non-user defined templates?
No, you can't. Really good question. Nope. I'm going to say that with a great deal of confidence, despite just having hit this other issue. The only templates that you can delete are personally user-defined ones. And by the way, when you create these, something else people might ask is, when I create a personal template like that and save it, can I make that template available to other users? And actually, you cannot. Those are available to you, but not to other MasterMine users. Now, the reports that you create from them, of course, are available to everybody. Just as a template, it's not available to others. You'd have to set up that template for the individual users that you want to have that template be available for. There are tricks, like if you make a whole bunch of them and you just say, listen, I've made 10 of them and I don't want to make those same 10 for a whole bunch of different people, let us know and we'll kind of introduce you. You actually can copy a folder full of them from your own machine to someone else's machine if you want to. They're actually just stored on a folder on your machine. But we've never actually encountered the situation where people had that many templates on their side that they wanted to save. Let me say one more thing just about templates as long as we're on it, because people are sometimes confused by this. In a traditional reporting sense, like with Crystal Reports, a template is a report a report setup that you save and then you run your data through, right? In that sense, all MasterMine reports are templates, because every report you create and save anywhere can be refreshed. And the refreshing is essentially that same kind of parallel to that act of running a bunch of data through a Crystal report template. And those are perfectly savable and shareable, and you save them with a certain name. The templates that we're talking about here are a little bit different. Here we're talking about making a bunch of selections in the actual create dialog and having those create dialog selections get reset and re-embodied in the Goldmine create dialog. So I want to be sure you know the difference between those two things. And Carnegie, let me know if that sounded muddled or if it's fairly straightforward. But I think that's important to know, because when you're using MasterMine, since every report you can do a save as from it, you can refresh it, you can reuse it, you can attach it to an email and send it to somebody. I mean, every report is itself the equivalent of a traditional template, except it's just so much easier to use, and it's so much more automatic that people's minds just don't immediately go to the idea of, oh, that's a template, but it really is.
I think you got the point across.
Okay, or certainly I talked about it a lot.
I hope.
I may not have been clear, but at least I talked about it a lot.
There you go.
So with that is the end of our 45 minutes here. I'm going to put up the usual end slide here, unless there's any other questions, Carnegie, that have come up.
There are none as of yet.
There are none? Okay, so there's the slide. That's the usual contact info. You can reach me. You can reach Carnegie if you want some help with any of this. Those of you who are have support packs, of course, we are happy to get online with you and help you just kind of sort of take advantage of this stuff quickly by doing the settings on your side, or showing you what to do, or answering your questions, or creating reports for you. If you're not on a support pack, be sure and get on one, or at least get one in your budget, as we are coming up to the fall here. It is a very good idea, by the way, to just keep in mind as you go into budgeting season for next year, it's a great idea to have a 10 or 40 or 80 unit support pack for MasterMine for the convenience of getting online with us and helping us work with you. And if you pre-budget for that, it's that much easier to just sort of get that help when you need it and move on quickly.
And please just keep in mind that support packs are not for technical support. That is covered with your annual maintenance.
That's right. Tech support's free if you're on annual maintenance. Report writing support is paid but highly efficient and worthwhile. Okay. Anything else, Carnegie?
I think that's it.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for your attention today. Pleasure speaking with you. Thanks for putting your questions in. And please, a reminder, go ahead and communicate with us in whatever ways work for you. LinkedIn, MasterMine group, Facebook page. Send us a Twitter. Tweet about us. Send us an email. Call us on the old AT&T dial-up phone if that helps you. We're happy to work with you. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.